Hello, everyone, and today we would like to present the adaptation model of Sister Callista Roy. Our presentation will go through the background of our theorist, major concepts of the theory she has proposed, major assumptions she has made, and lastly, we will depict our theory in a real life scenario and thus do a case study.
Our theorist is Sister Calista Roy. She was born on October 14, 1939 in Los Angeles, California. She received her bachelor's degree in nursing in 1963 in Mount St. Mary's College and earned her master's and doctorate degree in sociology from the University of California in 1973 and 1977 respectively. She worked as a professor and a chairperson of the Department of Nursing in the same college where she took her degrees. Roy started to work on the adaptation model in 1968 when Mount St. Mary's College adopted adaptation framework as the philosophical foundation of the nursing curriculum. Later on, Roy adaptation model was first published in the Nursing Outlook in 1970 with the title of Adaptation, a conceptual framework for nursing. Some of the major assumptions the model put forward are as follows. First, adaptation in person. It mainly explained about adaptation, its role in the health and illness of each person's life, and its significance in the nursing care provided. Roy explained adaptation as a process in which person use their conscious awareness to create integration between human perception and their environment. The model portrayed person as a holistic adaptive system as well as biopsychosocial being who has the ability to adjust effectively to the changes in the environment. Second is health. Roy described health as a reflection of adaptation made by the person with their own environment. She explained that health is not the freedom from death, disease, stress, and unhappiness, but it is the capacity of a person to cope with those situations in a competent way. And when these mechanisms for coping are ineffective, illness results. Third is environment. Roy viewed environment as the conditions, circumstances, and influences that surround and affect the development and behavior of the person. She suggested that it's the changing environment that stimulate the person to make adaptive changes. The factors that bring changes in the environment are focal, contextual, and residual stimuli. The focal stimulus is those that immediately confront the individual and are the most critical in initiating behavior, whereas contextual stimuli are all additional stimuli that contribute to the focal stimulus, and the residual stimulus are the values and beliefs that affect the individual's response in a given situation. Fourth is nursing. Roy defined nursing as a healthcare profession that focuses on human life processes and patterns and emphasizes promotion of health for individuals, families, groups, and society as a whole. Moreover, she suggested that nursing acts to enhance the interaction between persons and environment by promoting their adaptation.
Next, Roy explained about the coping processes, which were explained as innate or acquired ways of interacting with the changing environment, and these could be automatic response or learned response. Meanwhile, two subsystems or coping mechanisms were also explained by Roy, which include regulator subsystem and cognitor subsystem. Regulator subsystem responds automatically to stimuli through neural, chemical, or endocrine processes, whereas cognitive subsystem responds through channels of perceptual information processing, learning, judgment, and emotion. According to Roy, these coping mechanisms function in four modes to meet his or her needs. And these four modes are physiological, self concept, interdependence, and role function mode. Now we will see the four modes of coping mechanism. The first one is physiological mode, which refers to the physical responses of a person to an environment. And the underlying need for this is physiological integrity. Whereas the self concept mode refers to a person's thoughts, beliefs, and feelings about himself or herself at any given time. The underlying need for this is psychic or spiritual integrity. Meanwhile, the interdependence mode focuses on close relationships of people and their purpose, structure, and development. The underlying need for this is relational integrity. And the last one is role function mode, which focuses on the roles each person occupies in a society, which is a set of expectations about how a person occupying one position behave toward a person occupying another position. The underlying need for this is social integrity. Now we will look into Roy's explanation on nursing process. According to Roy adaptation model, the focus of nursing interventions is to manage stimuli in such a way as to promote a patient's effective coping and adaptation to their environment. It proposed that the modes of adaptation mechanisms serve as focal points for the six steps of nursing process, which include assessment of behaviors manifested from four adaptive modes. The second one is assessment of stimuli for those behaviors which are categorized as focal, contextual, or residual stimuli. The third one is nursing diagnosis of the patient's adaptive state. The fourth one is goal setting to promote adaptation. The fifth one is interventions aimed at managing the stimuli to promote adaptation. And the last one is evaluation to identify whether the adaptive goals have been met. This diagram depicts the Roy adaptation model in a glance. The stimuli such as focal, contextual, and residual, as well as the adaptation level of the patient, act as the input that triggers the coping mechanisms such as regulator and cognitor subsystems. These acts through the four modes physiological, self concept, role function, and interdependence. And as a result of these, the final outcome would be either adaptive state or ineffective response. In the ineffective response, the patient would become ill, and in the adaptive state, the patient would retain his or her health. Let me point out some of the scientific assumptions made by Roy, which are consciousness and meaning are constitute of person and environment integration. Awareness of self and environment is rooted in thinking and feeling. System relationships include acceptance, protection, and fostering of interdependence. Persons and the earth have common patterns and integral relationships. Integration of human and environment meanings results in adaptation. Some of the philosophical assumptions made by Roy are persons have mutual relationships with world and God. Human meaning is rooted in omega point convergence of the universe. Persons are accountable for the process of deriving, sustaining, and transforming the universe.
Hi, I'm Leena. I'm going to start with the case study. Mrs. Carter, a 70-year-old woman, was newly admitted to a long-term care facility. She was living alone with her daughter prior to moving to the long-term care facility. Within a year, she had numerous history of falls at home. The last fall caused a fracture on her hip. Since then, she can no longer ambulate, was bedbound for 4 months, and needs total assistance in personal care. She has on and off stage 1 pressure ulcer on her coccyx. She is also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and hypertension. Her family decided to move her to a long-term care facility 2 months ago for her safety and security. Mrs. Carter is having difficulty adopting her new environment and is worried that her pressure ulcer will get worse. The next one is physiological mode. The physiological needs of Mrs. Carter will be assessed and it is focused on nutrition and treatment of her pressure ulcer. In the subjective data on Mrs. Carter, she stated that I am afraid my bedsore will get worse. I want to have my own food cooked by my daughter, which indicates she has inadequate diet if not cooked by her daughter, and also she is afraid that her bedsore will get worse. The objective data, irregular reddened area on her coccyx, non-blanchable, measures 5 cm is noted. She is being overweight of 120 kg. Also noted that she is picky eater and seldom able to finish her meals. Next one is assessment stimuli. In focal stimuli, impaired mobility, diagnosis with type 1 diabetes. Contextual stimuli, prolonged bed rest, her age 70 years old, overweight, inadequate number of calories and protein in her diet. Residual stimuli, on and off pressure ulcer, she wants to eat food that her daughter cooks rather than having the meals planned by the dietitian for her. Thus, the assessment under physiological mode is completed. Client goal. Pressure ulcer will decrease in size every week until resolved and will be free of skin redness, open areas during her stay in the facility. Nursing interventions. Repositioning every 2 hours when she is in bed to prevent joint contracture and avoid pressure on the skin surface. Schedule skin assessment weekly to monitor the development or improvement of the skin. Monitor the affected area daily to note for any changes in skin color. Use a lifter sheet on repositioning to prevent friction and shearing. Change incontinent products as needed to prevent further skin breakdown. Strictly follow wound care protocol to treat the ulcer. Collaborate with a registered dietitian for additional protein and calorie sources in her diet for faster healing process. Encourage and educate her to eat the meal from the facility as planned by the dietitian. Next one is client evaluation. After 2 weeks, her stage 1 pressure ulcer on coccyx decreased in size from 5 cm to 2 cm. Thus, Mrs. Carter would be able to adapt to her physiological problem through the above explained nursing process, which is formulated based on the physiological coping mechanism. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dilbeepa. I'm going to discuss about self-concept mode. The assessment will focus on her decision making towards her own care. Client assessment. So, in subjective data, the statements made by Mrs. Carter could be assessed, such as Mrs. Carter stated, I feel so helpless and no control over everything that's happening around me. I would like to be involved in decision about my care, but sometimes I feel like I just needed to follow what everyone is telling me. Assessment stimuli. There is a three type of stimuli. First of all, focal stimuli being transferred to LPC due to health conditions, and conceptual stimuli being open and accepting about her condition, her capabilities to make her own decisions. Residual stimuli, family support. Client goal. Mrs. Carter will be able to discuss and rely her concerns and preferences related to personal care within 2 weeks. She will express a sense of personal control during her stay in the care. Nursing interventions. Include her to care conferences with the team to discuss her care concerns and to create a supportive environment. Use a non-judgmental and accepting attitude for her to be able to express her concerns freely. Ask what her preferences are before initiating any procedure and care. Discuss with her all the care procedures and treatment to increase her sense of autonomy. Allow her to have control over her environment to enhance her independence. Client evaluation. After 2 weeks, Mr. Carter was able to discuss her concerns regarding what day she wants to have shower. Also, she was able to express her request to be get up from bed at 10 a.m. daily for her to be able to sleep in. Thus, Mrs. Carter could be ensured that she is adapted with the self-concept mode of coping mechanism. Role function mode. In this assessment will focus on her transition from living at home with her daughter to moving in a long-term care facility with co-residents. Assessment of various roles. Primary role of Mrs. Carter is as a 70 years old female Secondary role is as mother, resident of a long-term care facility, and tertiary role as an active member of her church group.
Continuing on the role function mode, in the assessment of stimuli, focal stimuli includes Mrs. Quarters living as a resident of this facility for 2 months. Contextual stimuli includes active decision-making skills and her limited knowledge of the expected roles in the facility. For the residual stimuli, it includes ability to analyze the situations and her faith in God. Client goal for the assessment is Mrs. Carter will be able to express her knowledge of the role of the residents living in the facility. Nursing interventions include discuss with the patient the facility's policies regarding the roles and rights of the residents and encourage her to mingle with other co-residents on the unit. For the client evaluation, Mrs. Carter was able to express her knowledge regarding her right to participate in personal care decisions. Next is the interdependence mode. We will focus on Mrs. Carter's relationship with her daughter. During the assessment, Mrs. Carter stated, "I love my daughter so much. She's very precious to me. I love her family too." In the assessment of stimuli, focal stimulus is her close relationship with her daughter. Contextual stimuli are positive attitude of Mrs. Carter and her daughter, and daughter visits every weekend to have dinner with Mrs. Carter. Residual stimulus includes how Mrs. Carter value her relationship with her daughter. Client goal is to maintain her interdependence with her daughter throughout her stay in the facility. For the nursing interventions, it includes allowing Mrs. Carter's daughter to attend care conferences for her mother, encouraging Mrs. Carter's daughter to express her concerns and needs related to strengthening the relationship, and allowing and assisting them to use the family room to have dinner every weekend. For the client evaluation, Mrs. Carter's close relationship with her daughter is maintained. They spend dinner together every weekend, and her daughter is very supportive of Mrs. Carter's decisions regarding her care. Therefore, through our presentation, we have tried to explain the great theorist Sister Callista Roy's well-influenced Roy adaptation model, its assumptions and concepts, and its significance in real-life situations by conducting a detailed case study. The case scenario utilized Roy's model to guide and promote Mrs. Carter's adaptation on her transition to the long-term care facility by managing her environment, and thus her optimal level of wellness is maintained. Through our presentation, it clearly depicts that how Roy adaptation model is influential in forming the conceptual framework for nursing practice, whereas it is also used as the most influenced framework for nursing education and research as well. It is used in a number of practice-based studies in nursing, used for the development of adaptation instruments in hospitals, and a number of middle-range theories like adaptation for chronic pain, theory of adolescent empowerment are derived from Roy adaptation model. It brought a new approach to nursing, which is to promote adaptive responses of patients through the nursing process, formulated with the modes of coping mechanisms. Hence, we hope further study and research on the model would promote the nursing to much more higher standards of level of care and attain a well advanced knowledge body as a profession and as a discipline.